can put it up a little higher if you need.
What's that? No, you're fine.
Okay. Is the sound on the TV going to work?
Should.
We're going to find out.
Sir, I know we got off to a weird start. So to get things back on track, I'd like to bring in Santiago next. She's had a great year.
You want to see me, sirs? I was reading the sergeant's lips through the window, and he either said bring in Santiago next or something about a San Diego nest.
Are you ready for your self-evaluation?
I am. I understand from a lip reading session last week that you intend to ask us each 10 questions.
Normally, yes. But for you, I have just one question. What is your biggest flaw?
My biggest flaw? Working too hard? Being too thorough? Caring too much? Got it. Something entirely different.
Don't you guys love it when interviews ask you that question? What is your biggest flaw? And then we have to answer with something stupid like, I'm a perfectionist, or I'm too nice, like they can't see right through us the entire time. One of the reasons they ask that question is so that they know what our greatest flaw is, so that we don't scare away the people who come in the restaurant, or scare away the people who want to buy the car, or wreck the car that you're supposed to be selling. Anyway, one of the other reasons I think that they ask this question is primarily so that they know what your flaw is, but also so that you know what your flaw is. If you think about it, if you go into an interview and they ask you, what is your greatest flaw? And you say, I don't have any flaws, I'm perfect. Would you hire that person? No, because they obviously do have a flaw, and it is pride. And if that person says they're flawless, then imagine what kind of terrible things that would happen to the workplace. Here's the thing, though. Sometimes those flaws can get in the way, and you guys know this. So while I'm rambling here, take a little bit and think about what your greatest flaw is. I would have to say that mine is probably thinking too much. I know that sounds like an interview question, but it's kind of true. I really don't like emotion as much as other people do, and sometimes it can lead to some tension. I don't like emotion, and so people think that I'm cold or distant at some points, and it has led me into trouble at some times. Here's the thing. I've looked at myself sometimes and said, I'm such a flawed person. I can't feel things, so why is God calling me to ministry? Why is God calling me to the church? And I fail to realize that God made these weaknesses. He's the one who can see through me at all times. If God sat me down for an interview and said, what is your biggest flaw? What would I say to him? Would I just say, I think too much, or would I give him the whole spiel? Turn to Judges 3:12. Now, if you're racking your Bible college brain thinking, what on earth is in Judges 3:12, and you're coming up with nothing, I don't blame you, because this one is a doozy. This is the story of the second judge of Israel, Ehud. And it's not a memorable name, I will admit. You probably don't remember hearing about him in Sunday school, and that's okay, because this one is less than family friendly. But I'm pretty sure that you guys would recognize this first sentence. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And because they did this evil, the Lord gave Eglon, king of Moab, power over Israel. This is where things get intense. And you can see there's this cycle in the book of Judges that we can see starting from this sentence on. The first one, sin. The Israelites do something bad. They turn back to their idols. They start marrying into their enemies. Bad stuff, yada, yada, yada. Next, servitude. God punishes them by sending some army into their lands, taking over everything. Bad stuff happening. Third, sorrow. The Israelites cry out to God, and he then gives them a deliverer, salvation. Number 4. This cycle continuously repeats on and on and on in the book of Judges, and it's no different here in Ehud, as we can see from this first sentence. And also from the first word, again. This is the second time that it's happened. The first time, it was the first judge, Othniel, this superb war hero who was strong and courageous, someone that all of the Israelites had looked up to, seemingly flawless. So when the enemies came back and God put them into servitude once more, they were looking for someone like Othniel, someone who was courageous and flawless, who would deliver them in no time at all. But then Othniel died. And let's jump down to Judges 3:15. Again the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and he gave them a deliverer, Ehud, a left-handed man, the son of Gera the Benjamite. Wait, I'm sorry, who? What? Where is this guy from? And who is this guy anyway? Where is our war hero that we were promised? Where is Othniel Jr.? We don't want Ehud, and what's this about being left-handed anyway? Okay, I'm going to be honest. Being left-handed is not a disability or a weakness in its own right, though as a right-handed person, I will apologize for our scissors at our desks. This guy, though, this word for being left-handed is used very, very few times in the Bible. It is a Hebrew idiom that literally means bound or restricted in your right hand. It wasn't that he was left-hand dominant, it was that his right hand could not be used at all. Either it was shriveled up or maybe he didn't have it. He just had his left hand. This is a physical weakness, a physical flaw that people could see and make judgments based on him about. Do you think the Israelites want this guy as their chosen judge? Who can say for sure? But let's read on. The Israelites sent him with tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. That is pretty interesting. Why would they send him? Is it because they sensed God's spirit on this man, that they knew he was given to them by God? This is the actual Othniel Jr.? Or did they see his weakness and be like, well, this is all we got. This is the guy who's the most harmless to the king. Let's just send him. What could go wrong? Does that sound familiar to any of you? Let's read on a little bit. 16 through 17. Now, Ehud had made a double-edged sword about a cubit long, which he strapped to his right thigh underneath his clothing. This was so that, being a left-handed man, he could take out the sword and use it as he sees fit. He presented the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab, who was a very fat man. Thank you for that detail, Mr. Bible. But you can see a little something's going on here, right? He's going up to the king with a sword underneath his clothing. Don't you think the guards would have given him a pat down or something? Imagine if you went up to the White House trying to speak to the president, you'd have to go through Secret Service, right? Now, I'm sure Ehud didn't have to take out his keys or remove his shoes, but I mean, the guards would have been thorough anyway, you think? Some sort of pat down. I bet they saw his flaw. I bet they saw his one right hand that was shriveled up or missing or dying, and they figured he wasn't worth their time and effort. He was worthless because of his flaw. And sometimes that can happen to us too. People look at us, they see nothing but our flaws, and they make judgments based on that. And they think, nope, they're not worth our time. They're not worth our effort. What can they amount to? Anyway, I know that feeling sometimes. People can think I think too much, talk too much often, and it can lead to trouble. This is one way we justify our defense about our flaws. This is one reason why we don't let them bleed through, why we're not real with people. It's so that they can't hurt us and they can't make judgments about us. We want to be perfect. We don't want to let our flaws bleed through. Nevertheless, read on, 18 through 19. After Ehud had presented the tribute, he sent on their way those who had carried it. But on reaching the stone images near Gilgal, he himself went back to Eglon and said, "Your Majesty, I have a secret message for you." The king said to his attendants, "Leave us," and they all left. Hang on a second. The king just let him back in without a second thought? I think that's kind of weird. He just let him walk back in. I know he had a pat down. Do you think he went through a second pat down? I'm not entirely sure. He probably thought, he's unarmed. He doesn't have a right hand. What could go wrong? I'll tell you exactly what could go wrong. Let's read on. Ehud then approached him while he was sitting alone in the upper room of his palace and said, "I have a message from God for you." As the king rose from his seat, Ehud reached with his left hand, drew the sword from his right thigh, and plunged it into the king's belly. Even the handle sank into the king's belly, and his bowels discharged. That's exactly what it sounds like. Ehud did not pull the sword out, and the fat closed in over it. Then Ehud went out on the porch. He shut the doors of the upper room behind him and locked them. To borrow a phrase from Dr. Scott over here, wouldn't you like to be a fly on the wall at that encounter? You can almost smell the detail out of this. It's incredibly detailed. But what just happened? What just happened here? Why is this in the Bible? This is This is supposed to be a family book that's about teaching and loving each other. What is this? I'll tell you what this is. God just used a left-handed nobody to assassinate a king and bring an entire nation of people to freedom. Doesn't that give you some amount of hope? Doesn't that give you a little bit of hope that God can use your flaw to bring justice, to bring freedom somewhere? And it even gets better. The Bible tells us that after this encounter, Israel had 80 years of peace. Othniel had 40 years of peace in Israel. God gave Ehud twice as long to have peace in Israel as Othniel did. The war hero that everyone loved. Ehud. This is incredible. But can you imagine if Ehud